PJ Harvey and Lonesome Tonight. Flood, I think Polly's likened your direction in the studio to being a little bit like a film director at times as well. You know, that kind of bringing out different characters.
Yeah, he set the scene up, really. And then we just step in, but it's all set. And Flood records everything like all the time, don't you?
Because recording should be fun. It shouldn't be a pressure. And if everybody's sort of going, this is a bit unusual, or I haven't seen this, and we all know each other so well, there's this element of respect, but also, what's going to happen? And it's not going to be bad. It's going to be something that will spur each one of us off. And the idea of setting up somewhere that is creative is paramount for anything. And this was just, Polly said, I've got a few sound effects and maybe we could do something with that. And we got a bass out of a cow mooing.
This is more pastoral than even I was imagining.
But it was the idea that anything could go.
Yeah.
You could do anything and just freedom.
And I think that kind of homemade quality to the instrumentation was very important to you as well. I mean, John, maybe I could bring you in on that a little bit, this idea of kind of crafting.
All of John's gear is held together with bits of tape.
Right, so, I mean, you know.
I'm held together with bits of tape, yeah.
So this is, this passion for the analogue and beyond is good.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I like kind of cranky sounds and I like the organic feel of that and obviously it felt suitable for the music that we were trying to make, but most of the stuff that was in the studio did look as though it had just been either pulled from a junk shop or was about to be sort of taken there and swapped for something else, something more useful. But the feeling in the studio, because we've worked together for so many years, there's such a level of trust between the three of us that there's always that feeling that somebody's got your back at any time, so you can try any idea, no matter how ridiculous it might seem at the time.
That's important, actually. You don't feel embarrassed to try anything, and some of the ideas were terrible.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't matter. But so it's that freedom that actually brings out the goods,
and
I think.
I think you can only have that with years of experience. Like you said about, getting older and becoming more confident because you've been working on your art for such a long time and you found people that you trust.
Yeah. We just talked beforehand as well. It was really important to us to not tip into it just being what one would expect for the lyrical material. Like that, that lyrical material you'd expect to form some sort of folk band, have Morris dancers in the background. But we were all, especially John, was like watching that all the time. So
I hear jingling.
But I had, when I'd been writing Orlam, I'd collected a lot of natural sounds. Some I'd recorded myself, just streams or leaves in the wind. And then I've worked quite a lot in theatre with sound designers. So I had some friends that I just knew had libraries of those sorts of sounds. So I collected together everything that had some sort of reference to the lyrical material. And we talked about how can we use this that isn't predictable, that isn't just making like a natural world folk album. So we tried to make everything kind of unrecognisable, because and then as we began to experiment with that was what was exciting us. So when we were playing live in the room together, which is how every song started, none of us really knowing what we were doing, Flood playing as well, because Flood's never really joined in playing as much as he did on this record. So he would be there doing some sort of mysterious thing in the corner with something that looked like a telephone exchange. And then John and I would sort of switch instruments till we found what was feeling best. And then Cecil was taking these nature sounds but making them completely unrecognisable with various bits of equipment. So I think what started to happen was that John and I began to play with the atmosphere that Cecil was creating. So Cecil, like the way Flood had set the scene with the room and the microphones, and I think you hear that room on the whole of the recording, which is beautiful. That's such a Flood thing to do. But Cecil would set the atmosphere, because I felt like when he was playing all these strange noises, I felt like I entered a space, and I think John felt it too. In fact, I know he did, because I could feel him feeling it, because we were playing together. So we began to inhabit this sort of scene from the soundtrack we were making. And Flood kept conjuring it out of us, I felt, because what he was adding was often experimenting with what we were playing and then feeding it back to us. It was like this strange loop.
Polly, I want to ask you about something you mentioned earlier, which was the idea of drawing on different disciplines and art forms for inspiration. It's something that you've always done. And I think in the lead up to this album, the artist Steve McQueen gave you some really good advice. What happened? What did he say?
Well, John and I were on tour with the Hope 6 album, and we were in Chicago, and I've wanted to meet Steve for ages, and we've got a mutual friend in Michael Morris from Art Angel. I think I just happened to read somewhere that he was shooting in Chicago. So I contacted Michael and I said, is Steve here? Maybe I could grab a coffee with him. So that's how it happened. So we met up, not really knowing each other. It was sort of this awkward meeting in a hotel coffee bar, and neither of us really knowing what to talk about, and then realised that we had exactly the same birthday of the same year, pretty much within the same hour as each other.
There you go.
And then we were off, you know. But I think I met Steve at that time feeling quite directionless. I didn't really know what I was going to write next, or if I was going to write something. I was at that phase in my life, I think I was moving into my 50s, where I think we all naturally just look at what time have I got left? Do I really want to just keep doing this, or could I be doing something else? So we talked about all of that, really. I think he could see how I felt quite trapped in my thinking. My mind had sort of trapped me into thinking that I had to write songs, make albums and go on tour. And I kind of got in that loop. And he just reminded me that I was an artist that loved words, music and images. And just think about those three things. You've got words, you've got music, you've got images. What can you make out of that? And stop putting a framework around it. It doesn't have to be anything. And I realised that that's actually the way he conducts his lifestyle as a creative artist. Because he's making a film, then he's making a sculpture, then he's creating some short film in an art gallery. You know, he just follows his instinct of what he needs to make at that moment with the things that he loves. And so that's what I learned from him, and it was I just never forgot it.
It's interesting how, you know, even someone who, like your artistic practices incorporated many different things from the beginning.
I think
you can get stuck in a loop.
Yeah,
it's quite good to hear that.
For John and Flood, who both work in soundtrack as well, so they're often working with images.
Yeah.
But I think, like me, they just submerge themselves in art, in film. It's because it feeds that creative part of you. And you can't really separate them very easily, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading somewhere, it's 7 years it's been since your last album. And I was thinking how brilliant that is, because nobody gets a chance to have 7 years to go through whatever it is in life that one needs to, so that you have the opportunity to, you know, produce great art.
That's right, and there's a privilege to that. We were just talking about it actually while listening to that track, and that sense that, you know, we were saying it's the 7th album, I think, for the three of you together over many other projects and other adventures. But that idea that you have perspective, that's only something that can come to you with time. And while there are challenges to that, you always want to be trying to cover new ground and try new things. You also have the privilege of looking back and listening to yourself change. I mean, I wonder what that's like for you.
It's wonderful, really. I've always just had such a strong desire to learn new things and discover new ground. And I think we're all like that. None of us are interested in doing something we've done before, even if it was great. But we're just not interested in doing it again, because it's more about what else can we uncover whilst we're alive on this earth, because that's really exciting. And I think that's also what unites us, is because we're all on that wavelength, all wanting that. So that's what makes it easy. And it also makes it easy that when we're working together, if any of us spot something we feel is a bit similar to something we've done before, then we don't do it, and we do something else.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that actually, because all three of you have been cited by so many as inspirations. I mean, Polly, I was reading recently, St Vincent has talked about how inspirational you've been to her throughout your career, and I was wondering, is there anybody from whatever discipline that you kind of return to when you need to have your kind of creativity, your inspiration refreshed, or just to get out of your own head and lose yourself in something else?
Obviously, I met John when I was really young.
18 or something?
Maybe 17 even.
Yeah.
But John was a hero of mine. Like, because, down in the Dorset Wilds, in the middle of nowhere, there weren't that many bands. And John's band used to come down from Bristol, which seems so exotic.
The big city.
And he played in these clubs in Sherborne, this place called the Electric Broom Cupboard. And I'd go and watch his band, and he was a hero to me. He was like my David Bowie, and I loved watching him perform. He was so unusual. He had this 3-piece band, 2 percussionists and a bass, and everyone singing really complicated harmonies, all on headset mics, and John sort of leaning out over the audience like a preacher or something. It was kind of terrifying but really exciting, and very challenging lyrics. So John was that for me, and Flood was, because when I first started hearing Flood's recording, when I first started noticing these records that I loved and looking on the back, and it kept saying
Same
recorded
guy.
by Flood. Yeah. I was thinking, oh my God, I want to work with this person called Flood. So it was them for me, because they're a little bit older than me, I have to say. So that was the people that I looked up to, yeah.
And the flip side of that is there are so many occasions on this new record where I might be holding a microphone for Polly to sing, and the hairs on the back of my neck go up, and I just go, I am working with true art and artistry.
Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. It really is. It's pure magic, and it's wonderful to have you here to talk about it. PJ Harvey, Flood and John Parish, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.